Both Mueller and the committee are investigating the allegations of Russian meddling in our 2016 presidential election. Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte says his panel will defer to Mueller. Goodlatte has also called for a second special counsel to investigate the actions of Hillary Clinton, James Comey, and Loretta Lynch. That is progress. For more now on the Russia meddling probe, it goes on. The case against Clinton and Lynch and Comey also go on. We're joined now by Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Greg, good to have you here.
Good to be here, Lou.
Isn't that music to hear Bob Goodlatte, the chairman of the Judiciary, say he wants a damn special counsel to go after these people who I don't think there's any doubt in the minds of millions that they committed transgression after transgression, covering up Hillary Clinton and Comey. My God.
Congressional investigations are good, but you got to have a Department of Justice investigation, either by the DOJ itself or a special counsel. And only the Attorney General can appoint one in this case. You know, Sessions hasn't done it. And I think there's a great deal of frustration in the executive branch, at the White House in particular, that things haven't moved in that direction, that Sessions appears to be...
What the hell is wrong with Jeff Sessions? A man who, by the way, I've known for 20 years. I respect him. He's innovated. He has withdrawn. He's become isolated, it seems, either in the Justice Department or an undisclosed location. I don't know which. But something's terribly wrong with him.
He should never have accepted the position as Attorney General for a couple of reasons. First of all, he deceived the president. He intended to recuse from the outset, and he concealed that from the president. Second of all, and I hate to say this, but I think he's incompetent. He was a very fine U.S. Senator, but he is in way over his head at the Department of Justice. He has failed to comply with subpoena requests to turn over documents related to the antitrust.
So what's the president to do?
Well, you know, I think the president probably wishes that Sessions would step aside, but I don't think the president, after firing Comey and General Flynn, really wants to be in the position of creating the uproar all over again.
Do you think the president's new friends, particularly Schumer in the Senate, would accommodate a nomination if he were to proffer one?
Well, I think they love, Schumer and Pelosi probably love the fact that Sessions isn't doing anything. He hasn't appointed a special counsel to investigate Comey.
They also have got to love Paul Ryan. They've got to love Mitch McConnell.
Two of the most feckless
the hell with Democratic love.
Positions.
I mean, let's get to some Republican energy and direction here. The president is clearly leading, and he has these intransigent mediocrities dragging their feet, apparently in full assistance to the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Roundtable. McConnell and Ryan are fighting him all the way.
Things would change dramatically in Washington if McConnell and Ryan would step aside from their leadership positions and if Jeff Sessions would humbly resign as Attorney General. That would allow, I dare say, a special prosecutor to investigate Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Susan Rice, and Loretta Lynch, because there is compelling evidence that all of them may have committed crimes, not Donald Trump.
Well, I still want to give Chairman Bob Goodlatte of the Judiciary Committee, who's talking about more than a committee investigation. He's calling for a second special counsel, and I say good on you, Congressman.
He can't do it on his own. No, that's the problem.
But my God, we didn't even hear from him. The Judiciary Committees have finally discovered there's something going on besides Democratic claims of Russian meddling in our presidential election.
They have just awakened from their long slumber.
Well, we don't know that they're fully awake. I don't want to get too excited. Greg, quickly, California sanctuary state. My God, how big a mess is it?
You know, and it's happening all over again, the Kate Steinle situation, because just last month, an illegal immigrant shot and killed a popular community activist. He got busted a couple of weeks ago by local law enforcement in San Francisco. I said, hold him. What did they do? They let him go. People are getting killed because California is sanctuary city and state.
Your diction is impeccable, but for people who might have not heard, let me just repeat. Greg said Immigration and Customs Enforcement called for him to be detained,
That is
the
correct.
suspect. And they were told, go to hell.
Yeah, they were told go to hell. They let the guy go, and a couple of days later, it was revealed this guy's a killer or wanted for a killer.
Yeah.
The evidence is pretty clear.
And the families of so many, Kate Steinle, and dozens and dozens of others,
Right.
who have been so beset by tragedy in their own families, and now we're watching this play out again in California as a sanctuary state. What is wrong with Jerry Brown and the entire Democratic Party?
Look, I lived in California for 30 years. I hate to see my home state end up like this, but I know so many people, including family members, who are ready to call it quits and move out of California because the taxes are absurd and what's happening, sanctuary policies and other liberal policies.
Can the administration roll all of that back?
Can this administration? Absolutely. They can begin prosecuting.
They need an attorney general to do it, don't they?
They do. That's Jeff Sessions. He can prosecute under the law people who shield illegal immigrants. There's a specific statute. Let's start putting these mayors and police chiefs behind bars.
All right. Greg Jarrett, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. An appearance by Ben Shapiro at UC Berkeley ending with 9 arrests during a protest by, well, the out-of-its-mind left wing. Berkeley saying it spent $600,000 on security, leading Shapiro to tweet this, quote, "Free speech isn't free. It costs over $600,000 thanks to Antifa, or if you prefer, Etifa." Shapiro also shutting down a student at the event. And I got to tell you, watch this and see if you don't agree with me that Shapiro should be talking on left-wing campuses across the country. Listen as this student pressed him on the issue of abortion.
I believe that sentience is what gives something moral value, not necessarily being a human alone.
Okay,
because,
so when you're asleep, can I stab you?
I'm still considered sentient when I'm asleep.
Okay, if you are in a coma from which you may awake, can I stab you?
Well then, no, I guess not. I mean,
I'm glad you answered that because I have no interest in actually murdering you.
But that's still potential sentience, and it's still a potential.
I agree, it is potential sentience. You know what else is potential sentience? Being a fetus.
Well done, Ben Shapiro. Perhaps Berkeley should make Shapiro a visiting professor. And I think probably in the course of about one school year, he would roll back the left-wing movement at Berkeley, perhaps even eliminate it altogether. Joining me now to discuss what has become the lunacy of the left in this country, President Trump's battle against the obstructionists Ryan and McConnell, Ed Rollins, serving in 3 presidential administrations, chief political advisor to the House Republican leadership, the dean himself, Ed Rollins. Well, first of all, Ed, Ben Shapiro.
Well, I give him great praise for being there. Berkeley, I grew up 10 miles from Berkeley. I grew up in a town called Vallejo, a shipyard town. I've watched this stuff now for 50 years, 60 years, and I think to a certain extent.
All of it supported, by the way, the taxpayers of California. Thank you very much.
And a great university in spite of the students and the faculty, and also helped
I'm
launch.
going to argue with you about that.
Also helped launch Ronald Reagan's career by basically being toughened. I admire these conservatives who are willing to still go to these campuses and stand up for their rights and for their freedoms. And the kids aren't going to get educated because they're not going to listen to them. But Bannon's going soon, others are going. But the idea that a public university can shut down people and not allow them, to me, is just the most outrageous thing going on in society today.
Well, and the most outrageous thing, I think, beyond that is that the left in this country will not just simply sanction and disown Antifa, these left-wing protesters, who most of whom believe that violence is entirely appropriate for them, but they want to be handled by kid gloves, of course, if it's the police dealing with them.
Well, I think there's a few campuses with some football teams or some Aggies or what have you that if they came on and wanted to basically have violence, they'd get all the violence they wanted. Yeah. But I think to a certain extent they quickly run under the cover of the law. So
yeah, I mean let's be really straightforward about this. These people who say they want to be violent toward the right would not put up with, for a second, violence from the right.
Well, what they want is they don't have a message and they want attention. And the reality is every time there's
Well, let's give them attention.
well, you put a camera on them and they'll basically spout off anything they want.
But still they persist because they are enabled by left-wing professors in public taxpayer-supported universities, as well, of course, as private universities as well. I want to turn to the president today, stepping forward, saying absolutely they need to be proactive and get nasty with radical Islamist terrorists. The president, again, today, deciding to name the enemy, and he means business.
Well, it's very important he does that, and he's done it earlier, and he's going to do it continually because he realizes that is the enemy. And you know what? Anybody else around the world can call it whatever they want to, but this is a ongoing worldwide group that wants to destroy everything that we stand for.
Yes, and we know this because we've been fighting them for 16 years without victory. And this president is moving us closer and closer to actually putting radical Islamists, whether it's the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, whomever, putting them to ground.
Well, the young men and women that we have put in combat for the last 16 years in these various parts of the world deserve a leader like they have today. And at the end of the day, the engagement is if they're out there shooting at you, endangering Americans, endangering others, go get them.
I want to show you something else that the president said today, Ed, and talking about legislation around DACA, talking about the broader issue of illegal immigration. President Trump saying this, quote, in a tweet, chain migration. Can we see that? Chain migration cannot be allowed to be part of any legislation on immigration. Yay, Mr. President. And he is being straightforward about it because this explodes under DACA, whatever the Congress and the Senate come up with, if he were to sign it. It would change the numbers by a factor of at least, in my opinion, about 10. In other words, if there are 800,000 DACA students, all of them, reaching up into the 30s in age, I mean, they're not kids, as a number of people, including Senator Schumer, refer to them. Their average age is 26. But that would mean about not 5 million, but probably as many as 8 million would be brought in under chain migration. It's critically important what the president said today.
Well, the whole chain operation, we took in about 1.3 million immigrants in the last year, and about 65% of those are basically connected in family in some way, shape, or form, and that's just not right. So you're exactly right, and the bottom line here is, in '86, we had the last immigration bill. It was successful. We offered the immigration to 5 million people. 2.5 million took it. But in spite of that, because we didn't force our
But the promised border security
didn't come.
By the Democrats
didn't come. So we basically went up to 10, 12, now 14, or whatever number it is.
Yeah, it's probably closer to 20.
Right. And so you've got to basically make sure that whatever you do here is going to work.
Ed Rollins, great to see you, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much. The White House today granted the wish of an 11-year-old young man. 11-year-old Frank Giacchio of Falls Church, Virginia. There he is, the little fellow mowing the rose garden lawn. He had written a letter to President Trump saying it would be an honor to cut grass at the White House. The sixth grader is an entrepreneur. And as you see there, he doesn't even take notice of the President of the United States. He barely stopped his work to speak with President Trump, who called the young entrepreneur the future of the country. And yes, he is in the gardening, landscaping, and lawn mowing business. An 11-year-old entrepreneur. Good for the White House for bringing him to work there on this beautiful day in America. Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. The question is, do you believe that the 11-year-old got more work done mowing the White House lawn this morning than Congress has accomplished all year? We'd like to hear from you on this. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. In our online poll last night, we asked, do you believe the obstructionism of Ryan and McConnell gives the president little choice but to turn to Democrats to achieve his agenda? 83% of you agree with the president. You say yes. Well, joining me now, Forbes Media Chairman, Editor-in-Chief, the legendary Steve Forbes. Steve, great to have you here.
Good to be here.
Ryan and McConnell, They are burrs under saddles. They are nothing but obstructionists. They've never accomplished anything in Congress. There is no reason for them to be there. What does this president have to do to get rid of them?
He's got to go to the people of the nation. Once he puts a specific tax plan on the table, make it simple, make it big, ignore all the naysayers, do what Reagan did. You create heat on Capitol Hill. Congress never would have passed his tax cuts if he hadn't had the support of public opinion. The president's got to do that probably next month.
The president laying down markers, for example, on illegal immigration and any legislation that the Republicans and Democrats come up with, saying that will not be polluted, sullied by chain migration, which changes the mathematics on everything. How much credit do you give him?
Well, I think trying to prevent a chain reaction, that's why they call it the chain, where you bring in one, you bring in eight. That is going to change whenever they get around to real immigration reform. And he's going to make it clear, all right, you want the DACA Act, you got to make sure it's not going to be multiplying.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the left will insist upon, as you well know, as they have since 1965. The reason we've seen an explosion in immigration in this country, both legal and illegal, is because of subsequent chain migration where families, entire families, extended families come into the United States.
Yeah, unless they're good ball players. But now,
in case you didn't know it, Mr. Forbes is a passionate Yankees fan. Let's turn to...
But just quickly,
surely.
The biggest blocker before he became president of any kind of sensible immigration reform, Barack Obama.
Yeah, well, he and also the Democrats of the left, because all this going back to Senator Ted Kennedy and Senator John McCain, the authors of comprehensive immigration reform. I heard Sarah Sanders the other day, the press secretary, use the expression, chills went down my back, because we know that means nothing. It is enlarging a problem instead of solving it. It's dreadful. This middle-class tax cut, the president is telling everybody point blank he means business and cutting their taxes, and one can just see the indifference and even the disrespect of both McConnell and Ryan as they sat there in the White House listening to the president. That's not where they live.
It's all the more reason. Make it big, simple, everyone can understand it, and then he'll get the support for it. Complicating it, getting in the weeds, as Ryan is doing, I hope Mnuchin stops doing it. Make it big, simple. Reagan showed how to do it. Do it again.
Steve Forbes, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. That's it for us tonight. We thank you for being with us. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday. Good night from New York. Tonight, North Korea has fired a missile. This missile traveling 2,300 miles east from Pyongyang. Japanese media reports that missile flew over Japan, where authorities warned residents to take shelter. Tonight's launch following a threat from the North to sink, in quote, Japan with a nuclear weapon. The North Korean regime has now launched 23 missiles this year alone. The previous missile flew over Japan as well last month. We'll bring you any developments throughout this broadcast, and we expect to learn far more about this 23rd missile launch by the North Koreans. We're also following developments from the Trump administration, Democrats and the Republican establishment trying to drive a wedge between President Trump and his base over the issues of DACA, border security, and the border wall. The intransigence, the obstructionism of Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell compelled the president to find partners across the aisle in order to move his agenda forward and to get the people's business done. We are actually witnessing a worsening between the conflict between the duly elected president of the United States and the arrayed power of the Chamber of Commerce, Business Roundtable, and the establishment that President Trump ran against. The GOP leadership of the House and Senate are clearly indifferent to casualties in the middle class and in the small businesses that result from this conflict. Our president's counselors and advisors, I will say, have not guided the president as well as any of us should expect. And Mr. Trump, increasingly isolated in the White House with the departure of so many of his aides who were at his side throughout most of his campaign for the presidency. As an anti-establishment candidate, President Trump has very few, perhaps no friends at all in the Washington swamp, and frankly, very few true friends even in the West Wing of the White House, making it imperative the president's base ensure Democrats and Republican establishment figures fail in their efforts to subvert the president's initiatives to build the border wall, enforce immigration laws, and enact his Make America Great agenda. Fox News correspondent Kevin Corke is at the White House, and he has our report tonight.
We'll only do it if we get extreme security, if we get not only surveillance, but everything that goes along with surveillance, and ultimately we have to have the wall. If we don't have the wall, we're doing nothing.
Even after the president, in Florida surveying Hurricane Irma damage, strongly emphasized that a border wall between the U.S. and Mexico would be built, word of a possible deal with Democrats on DACA had long since sparked a major political firestorm back in Washington. It began late last night when the Associated Press reported that Democrats had announced a deal with the president that would include border security, but no wall. That led to an avalanche of tweets from leading conservatives accusing the president of caving on his promise to fight illegal immigration, punctuated by Iowa Republican Congressman Steve King's since-deleted tweet that read, quote, "If AP is correct, Trump base is blown up, destroyed, irreparable, and disillusioned beyond repair. No promise is credible." But early this morning on Twitter, the president suggested the AP got it wrong, writing no deal was made last night on DACA. Massive border security would have to be agreed to in exchange for consent, would be subject to vote. However, he seems to buoy hope among Democrats that a compromise could be in the offing, tweeting, "Does anybody really want to throw out good, educated, and accomplished young people who have jobs, some serving in the military? Really?" On Capitol Hill, party leaders from both sides of the aisle had differing views on how the conversation played out on DACA between President Trump and Democratic leaders Pelosi and Schumer at last night's White House gathering. But Democrats seemed to revel in the GOP's intra-party fight.
Details will matter, but it was a very, very positive step for the president to commit to DACA protections without insisting on the inclusion of or even a debate about the border wall.
There is no agreement. The president and the chief of staff called me from Air Force One today to discuss what was discussed. And it was a discussion, not an agreement or negotiation.
We will break the cycle of amnesty and illegal immigration. We will break the cycle. There will be no amnesty.
Then candidate Donald Trump made the border wall his top priority, a promise he has since touted repeatedly at rallies around the country since becoming president, to the delight of his many supporters. A promise he acknowledged today could be delayed but won't be denied. And he vowed,
"There'll be no amnesty."
Lou, White House officials insist any conversation or negotiation about DACA or Dreamers or border security, broadly speaking, or even specifically the border wall, will ultimately be fleshed out by congressional lawmakers, making conversations like the one the president had with Democratic leaders Wednesday night merely a prelude for what lies ahead. Lou?
A lot lies ahead, and what a prelude. Thank you very much, Kevin Corke from the White House. Joining us now to discuss the president's dinner with Democratic leaders and a social media firestorm that resulted the fate of an unconstitutional DACA policy and some 800,000 Dreamers and their, 4 million associated relatives who might have an opportunity to cross the border as well or remain this side of the border. And whether these obstructious Republican leaders actually have driven President Trump into the arms of Democrats with no plans whatsoever to help the president build a border wall or move his agenda. Ed Rollins, who served in 3 presidential administrations, the chief political advisor to the House Republican leadership, the dean himself, and Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Post, Michael Goodwin. Both are Fox News contributors and great Americans.
Thank you.
Michael, let's start with you tonight. The president started a firestorm on social media with his discussions of a quote-unquote an agreement,
right.
As Senator Chuck Schumer styled it. I love the fact that Schumer is out pushing what happened in a meeting with the President of the United States before the President can even address the matter.
That's a shock, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Look, I think the next time the President's going to have dinner alone with Democrats, he better bring a food taster. Because I think that the end result of this, while I applaud the President for working with Democrats last week, I think this week it looks like he's rushing ahead of his skis and getting too far out there making a deal when his backtracking today on what exactly he agreed to, putting out several different statements through tweets and then his own comments, I'm not really sure what they did agree to at this point.
Well,
I'm not sure where it stands,
an agreement at all,
or where the wall stands, most importantly here.
What do you make of it, Ed?
What I make of it is, if you're going to have an agreement, you're going to sit down with the Democrats. What are you getting back in return? We've got a big tax bill coming up. We've just struggling on a health care bill. Is Schumer going to give him the 1 or 2 or 5 votes that he needs to get the health care bill through? Is Mrs. Pelosi going to round up Democrats to support his tax bill? If not, he shouldn't even be discussing anything with them. My issue here, and you touched on it in the beginning statement, the White House staff. The big story today is Jared Kushner is having a big meeting with high-powered people to talk about how we basically get prisoners back into society again. That should not be at the White House. That should be at the Department of Labor. Cohen is meeting next week.
Justice Department.
Cohen is meeting next week with the UN, all the world leaders coming in here. He wants to meet with people interested in his environmental platform, which isn't the president's platform. The president ought to have his team basically out there scrounging, pushing, twisting arms to get this tax bill through. And if he doesn't do that, the rest of it doesn't matter.
Michael, following Ed's 2 points there, and I think they're absolutely correct. Following that, what is the chief of staff doing here? Why is he permitting Gary Cohn, Jared Kushner, to take on these initiatives as if the president weren't in Florida with the First Lady meeting with the victims of Hurricane Irma, assessing damage? It's an extraordinary, to me at least, departure from what normally would be happening in a White House.
Well, look, the events of the last 24 hours or so do speak to some kind of a breakdown or a train wreck that I can't make sense of. I actually have been saying recently that Trump, I thought, was doing really well. I thought Kelly had brought some unifying messaging to the White House. Things had been going pretty well. But the last 24 hours seemed like a reversal in a lot of ways. I mean, Ed's point about not getting anything. I mean, I think the kindest thing you can say is he wants to get DACA out of the way, wants to get everything out of the way for taxes. But if you're not going to make a good bargain, then you're just digging yourself, creating new problems down the road.
Well, the president surely, as Paul Ryan pointed out, knows that the negotiation will take place in part with the Republican leadership, whether it be the Speaker's office or the leader's office over in the Senate. All of that has to happen with the majority party.
Right.
So any declaration by Schumer is premature at best, even though the president and he may agree on which way the wind is blowing on the southern border. I don't know. But it's interesting that people are trying to drive a wedge between this president and the base right now. And those people are the Dems, the left wing, and, of course, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and all of their great friends over at K Street, including the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Roundtable.
Well, he's going to change the town, and he's going to change the town by winning some victories here in the near future. I lived through the 86 immigration bill. We had promises from the Congress when they passed it that they were going to supply not a wall, but basically more border security. We let all the illegals in that wanted to be qualified, and we did nothing. We did nothing.
There is no guarantee that could be offered by Chuck Schumer,
right,
who is so wantonly bereft of integrity that I cannot imagine why anyone would trust such an ideological partisan to enter into a quote-unquote finite agreement,
right,
which he claimed.
Well, look, and I think we all agree that the wall is so central to the president's appeal and to his election that you take the wall out of all of this.
Is it symbolic with the base, or is it a manifest promise by this president perceived as such by the base.
I think to the base, it's a manifest promise. I think to everybody else, it's symbolic. But to the base, it matters maybe more than anything else.
And I would argue more than symbolic. I would argue it is something we need to basically secure that border. That border we have had.
Yeah.
That's
the remarkable thing here is that this president, not only in terms of illegal immigration, but addressing that border, because it is where most of the majority of marijuana, methamphetamines, cocaine, and heroin, it's where those drugs, the majority of them, come into this country.
Right.
And he is the only candidate of, 17 of them, and then in the general election, to deal with the issue of what drugs are doing to this country, illegal drugs and legal.
And I think the problem today is he has called into doubt his own commitment to it, at least through several cycles. And I think that's a major mistake.
It's a major mistake. It is also a mistake that it is not inexplicable. It is, people do not appreciate the strength of this president, because he is isolated in that White House from so many of the advisors with whom he's worked over 2 years in reaching, more than 2 years, in reaching the White House. But also, he is under assault day after day after day, not only by the national left-wing media, the establishment of this country that he ran against and understood that he would be at war with, but his own party in the persons of Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. If there is any way this president, the Republican Party, can get Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell out of those positions, the national interest will be well served and brighter days will await us all.
Well, the slogan has to be for every Republican running, build the wall, and then we'll talk about comprehensive immigration later.
Yeah, look, I think it's wall, wall, wall. If he gives up on the wall, he's gutted the movement.
Right.
Yeah, he's made no suggestion, certainly, that, to my knowledge, that he's given up on the wall. In fact, he talks about putting it later. Perhaps the talk should be about advancing the schedule.
Right.
Ed, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Michael, thank you, as always. Let's turn to the Dems and the president coming up with these late dinner session mind melds, apparently, of some sort. But with Chuck Schumer coming out of the White House to announce the grand bargain of all time, and people running with it before the White House could even react. It is your reaction to it all.
Well, you know, anybody that finds any of this surprising obviously has not been paying attention to the first part of this administration or for the campaign over the past 2 years. This is exactly the way Donald Trump operates. And he has worked tirelessly, although hopelessly, with Republicans to get things done with them. And not only get things done that he had promised in his campaign, but all of them had promised in their campaigns. And so the idea that he's turning around now, negotiating with the Democrats, it's a smart move. It's not, you know, as a conservative, it's not what I would rather him figure out a way to strike a deal with Republicans, because that would be a more conservative deal. But I mean, you can't blame the guy for doing this.
In the social media firestorm that did follow, it is also difficult to understand why the president, who ended DACA once, because of course it belongs in Congress as a matter of constitutional parameter, and yet he wants to be involved in it again, in bargaining, discussing, negotiating, agreeing, whatever he did with Schumer and Pelosi. I mean, it's very odd to many people that he would then sort of re-inject himself into DACA.
Yeah, but I think that he views that as being something of a bargaining chip, and as he does the wall, and if he can sort of, hey, look, the guy's not a partisan guy. He's not a conservative. He's certainly not a liberal, but he's a practical guy. He's a pragmatic guy. And I think,
Charlie, he does say he is conservative. That he is a conservative.
Yeah, but he's not conservative in the sort of Washington sense, which I don't think is clearly hasn't been very successful.
He's not in the Paul Ryan sense at all.
And you know, he made this deal with the Democrats on the debt ceiling that they call it around here.
Right.
We've had that debt ceiling around here for what, 25 years. And do you know how much the debt has gone up since they put the debt ceiling on? It's gone up.
And did you listen to the morons try to defend the debt ceiling? Oh no, we can't lose the debt ceiling. What would we have to shut the government down? And would we really have to pay our bills? You know, this is just, these are some of the most confused, conflicted people we could ever put in elected office, the leadership in the House and Senate.
And I think that that's exactly why voters sent somebody like Donald Trump, is because, you know, he may not have even known what a debt ceiling was before he got here, but at least he's going to do something different because we know what the outcome is going to be with these people. After 25 years of the debt ceiling, it's gone up, what, $16 trillion or $15 trillion, and people just want something to change.
Yeah, something to change, and they do want the damn wall built. Let's leave that.
Yes,
the base wants that wall built.
And
it's not symbolic.
And they don't like amnesty.
And yeah, I won't even say that word. I don't want to. I'm touching that word. Charlie Hurd, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lou.
In our online poll last night, we asked, will Trump supporters who chanted "lock her up" at rallies throughout 2015 and 16, well, will they soon get their wish? Only 53% of you said yes. Well, joining us now, Washington Times columnist, Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce, radio talk show host on New York's WOR, Mark Simone. Thanks. Good to see you both.
Pleasure to be here.
Let's start with the base, the furor that was kicked up on social media, at least. Your reaction?
Look, I think that there's a lot that's going on, social media especially, the attitudes that are being promoted. And I just want to remind the base and Trump supporters that nothing has really happened yet. And yet we're being told, whether it's the legacy media, by Pelosi or by Schumer, that Trump is doing X, Y, and Z. I think that it would be really good advice that all of us kind of step back a little bit. Make sure, though, that the president knows where we stand, because we want him to be a successful president.
If he doesn't know that the base is hacked off, inflamed.
Follow Ann Coulter on Twitter.
Oh, well, I'm not sure that he does. Put it that way. What do you think?
I think anytime you're going against Paul Ryan and McConnell, you're doing God's work. Keep it up. Chuck Schumer, Pelosi might think
now you tell me what you do when he's working with Schumer and Pelosi.
I hate to say
you got it right on Ryan and McConnell. What's the deal with Pelosi and Schumer?
I hate to say it, but with Schumer and Pelosi, at least I know where they stand. More so than with Ryan and McConnell.
And it's a warning. I think it's a warning to McConnell and Ryan that this is what we're going to be, we're going to make you irrelevant in this process. And to the Republicans who can move both of those men out of leadership, it sends an even larger signal.
Always remember he's a deal maker. These are opening bids, and he's playing four-dimensional chess.
And I get all of that. He's also president of the United States. And sometimes a president achieves more by guiding a process rather than getting involved in it. I thought he was brilliant in terms of turning DACA back to Congress where the issue belongs. And then the next thing we know, he's having dinner with Pelosi and Schumer, who, by the way, this president has worked with Schumer, knows Schumer. What did he call him? Crying Chuck and the head clown.
But don't panic.
Suddenly, he's having to put up with him at dinner.
Keep calm. He had dinner with Mitt Romney. It doesn't mean anything.
Oh boy, I didn't like that dinner either. As a matter of fact, not at all.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that well, anyway, we're going to see a lot more. We're going to hear from some really interesting Democrats. Susan Rice now changing her story again about the unmasking scandal in which she ordered the unmasking of Trump transition officials.
Yeah, I don't think
she denied, and now
it's you've got these denials right there on their face, but I don't think she realizes what she's done. And this, of course, is classic for the Democrats. They really have
don't.
I don't. With what she has confessed to, I don't think that she does.
The woman has lied for months.
Well, they know how to lie, but they are also generally they're dumb.
Instant liar.
Well, that's it. But see, that's instinct. It's their instinct to lie. What they don't understand.
You are so nice. You are.
But I was on the left. I was on the left. Well, no, it's their instinct to lie. It's what they're comfortable with, but they're also not necessarily the brightest bulbs in the lamp. I don't think she understands, and she also believes she'll be protected. But the
next thing you're going to tell me she is like Sally Quinn, an occultist who is going to.
What are the odds she unmask 3 people. It happens to be Jared Kushner and General
on the orders of someone else. She's always been the fall woman. She's always been the fall woman from the Obama administration. She's not making this decision on her own.
President Obama?
Oh, God forbid, should someone else in that administration. Or Brennan, and of course Obama, and of course Hillary.
Spies on everybody, including the Intelligence Committee in the Senate that had oversight.
She'll be under the bus.
You get the last word.
Oh, God. I don't know where to start. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun watching this.
Yeah.
And don't lock up Hillary. This book tour is more fun than anything.
Oh, I don't think that she should be locked up, well, anytime soon.
And
as long as she's on the road, America is going to be well entertained.
Yeah.
Keep it going. I say keep going.
New developments tonight in the Susan Rice unmasking scandal. The former Obama National Security Advisor offering more excuses as to why she had the names of some Trump campaign officials unmasked, revealing their identities despite her initial denial that she unmasked anyone. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge with our report.
A senior Capitol Hill source told Fox News former National Security Advisor Susan Rice offered, quote, vast and varied explanations for requesting the names of Trump transition team members who were swept up in surveillance of foreign government officials. Returning from Florida on Air Force One, President Trump said the so-called unmasking of his team was wrong.
What she did was wrong, and we've been saying that, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
The source said Rice told lawmakers she was bothered by a December 2016 Trump Tower meeting, reportedly between the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, former campaign strategist Steve Bannon, incoming National Security Advisor Mike Flynn, and the United Arab Emirates Crown Prince. Rice said the Gulf delegation had asked for a meeting with President Obama, then canceled because they said they weren't coming to the U.S., then came quietly to see the Trump team. A former intelligence official disputed Rice's characterization, emphasizing the Gulf delegation did ask for a meeting with Mr. Obama, but the White House dropped the ball. There was no immediate comment from the United Arab Emirates Embassy in Washington. Rice's explanation appears to back up Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes' allegations earlier this year that the Trump team's names were improperly revealed. In a PBS interview at the time, Rice denied any knowledge of the unmasking.
I know nothing about this. I was surprised to see reports from Chairman Nunes on that count today.
In a subsequent interview on MSNBC, Rice insisted that any unmasking requests were above board.
The allegation is that somehow Obama administration officials utilized intelligence for political purposes. That's absolutely false.
After Nunes issued subpoenas for the unmasking requests by Rice, former CIA Director John Brennan, and former UN Ambassador Samantha Power, who allegedly made hundreds, Nunes wrote to the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, that the possible motivation was to, quote, achieve partisan political purposes, including selective anonymous leaking.
Multiple sources tell Fox News they found Rice's explanation about unmasking, quote, dubious. And they went as far as claiming the Democrats might regret digging into the Russia collusion allegations because it has exposed embarrassing revelations about the Obama National Security Team, as well as former Attorney General Loretta Lynch.
Joining us tonight to discuss the Congress's, well, their passion, their motivation to fulfill the expectations of the American people and how they're going to do that, working with this president. We are joined by Washington Times opinion editor Charlie Hurt. Charlie, great to have you with us.
Good to be with you, Lou.
There is something in this DACA decision in which the president lives up to a campaign promise, delivers, and at the same time maneuvers Congress into a position where they're going to have to fly true flags and expose themselves to the American people on the issue of immigration and border security.
Yeah, you know, the funniest thing about this whole deal today was listening to members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, both Democrats and Republicans, come out and talk about how, oh, it's so important we do something to help these people. These are good people. We want, you know, all that stuff. And you're just sitting there looking at them and you're like, wait a second. The reason that Barack Obama didn't do this for 5 years is because he didn't have the authority to do it. Only Congress had the authority to do it. And they don't ever do it. And of course, Democrats who are demagoguing this thing to death now, they had complete control of both chambers of Congress and the White House when President Obama got elected. They didn't lift a finger to help these people. And now they're accusing Donald Trump of doing something that's going to tear families apart, and it's so cruel. It's just another example, as you so eloquently just pointed out, of Congress completely failing the lowest, simplest bar of accomplishing anything positive for this country.
And to watch the president, and with Ryan and McConnell on either side of him, I mean, two most uncomfortable people ever, I think, and perhaps congressional leadership sitting in a White House. The president simply has them outmatched in any fashion by any metric, and they seem to be beginning to understand that.
Do you think that Donald Trump enjoys making people his adversaries feel uncomfortable standing beside him in front of the cameras? I think that that is something he has very much perfected. And of course, you're exactly right. People talk about how, I don't think people give Donald Trump credit for just how sophisticated he is about doing that. He's great at making his enemies go absolutely berserk, and he just rolls with it.
And to have Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, beg the president not to end DACA, which is unconstitutional by court review, by the highest court in the land, and ask him not to end it, and instead of insisting that as the leader of the House that our representatives pass law. I mean, that is what a fraud Paul Ryan is as a leader of any kind in the House of Representatives.
I think it tells you for certain that Paul Ryan was looking around at Congress, and he knows better than anybody that this is going to be a real hard task, even though it's so simple. On its face, it's so simple. You could get 535 people out of the phone book and put them together, and they take care of this within 10 minutes. But up here on Capitol Hill, he knew that it was going to be that difficult. And don't forget this, too, Lou. It's not just the courts that said that this was unconstitutional. Barack Obama told us this was unconstitutional for a good 5 years before he then decided to just go ahead and do it, even though it was unconstitutional.
What do you make of the former president, coming out for the first time in my memory, or reading a president taking on a sitting president on an issue of this import?
To listen to that guy talk about how cruel this is, because the administration has the names and information of all these people that gave their information to the federal government based on the false promises and the lies of Barack Obama and Democrats, that somehow this was all going to work out. Of course it wasn't going to work out. Anybody with a law degree knows that it's not going to work out. He lied to those people. He tricked them into giving all of their information, and now stands on the sidelines, now that we have a lawful person come back and restore constitutional lawfulness when it comes to this, and he's going to accuse Donald Trump of being cruel? Who's the guy that conned these people into giving the information in the first place? He is. And it's the height of hypocrisy, and it just proves that despite all of the rosy promises that we got from Barack Obama in 2008, he was a terrible president.
A terrible president, and his cruelty was in leaving unengaged the North Koreans and
appeasing them to the point that they could proceed to perfect what they claim now is a hydrogen bomb.
And Iran?
They tested Sunday $150 billion to Iran in an open path